What's going on, everyone? Working out is hard, but working out in a deficit is harder. Or is it? I'm currently in the 6th month of dieting for my natural bodybuilding competition prep. My timeline thus far has looked like this. I started with 18 weeks of being in a deficit, where I lost 19 pounds. Following that, I spent 4.5 weeks in maintenance, where I dropped about 1 pound. Now I'm back in a concrete deficit to get me to my stage-ready physique. In this video, as I walk you through my latest gym workout, I'm going to share with you some insights about my approach to working out whilst being in an ongoing deficit. Before we dive in, if you find yourself enjoying the video, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out. Okay, let's get into it. First up in the session are Romanian deadlifts. When it comes to training in an ongoing deficit, I found that the body is less forgiving to sloppy exercise technique. And that makes sense. Being in a deficit means the body is taking in less energy from food, say when you're at maintenance or a surplus. If sloppy exercise technique were to lead to extra damage to the joints, tendons, or ligaments, it might be more difficult to recover from, since there would be less energy from food to fuel that recovery. So when I'm working out in a deficit, I feel even more inclined to keeping my exercise technique top notch and to even keep it robotic looking. Now, I do need to clarify in that training with an even greater attention to detail when it comes to exercise technique, that does not mean to not train as hard. Rather, it means that upon training super hard, I just put in tons of energy to not let my technique slip in the process. This is still true for me when I'm not training in a deficit, since I think that's the ideal for training in any state, whether that be a deficit, surplus, or maintenance. But when I'm not in a deficit, I do push myself to be a bit more assertive about progressing, and in the process, my technique doesn't always look quite as crisp sometimes. My rep tempo often gets a touch faster, and even upon pushing for the last several reps of a very hard set, my setup might start to break down a bit. With Romanian deadlifts, for example, my back might start to round slightly when I'm shooting for the last rep or two of a set in favor of progressing, versus now being in the deficit where I'd be very hard pressed to allow even a little bit of rounding at the end of the set, even though maybe there would be a tiny bit of it. Is that the ideal in a surplus? Tough to know for sure, but I know for me, when in a deficit, it probably isn't, since those kind of gray reps and sets are more difficult to recover from. What seems to be more effective is to train as hard as possible, but really without technique slipping much at all. And from there, what I found is my muscles get tons of stimulus and I'm able to recover efficiently. Perfectly appropriate for being in a deficit. Flat dumbbell bench press is up next. When I'm in an ongoing deficit, the first place I'll often notice a change in my performance is with my bench pressing. First, it starts to become difficult to maintain my regular loads and reps per set. And then eventually, the reps start to drop a bit on average, followed by me having to decrease the load little by little. That being so, even after having been dieting for over 5 months at this point, my performance has not started to drop yet. I'm noticing that there's not any particular difference in hitting my regular rep targets with my regular loads right now compared to, say, 3 months ago. So, if I'm using that as a metric to determine how being in a deficit is affecting my training, then it would be safe to say that overall, my energy and performance capacity in the gym is relatively unaffected. Even though outside of the gym, I do feel more intense hunger at times and maybe some slight differences in mood, on paper, my gym performance is still A-okay. As I get deeper into the diet, things will eventually taper, but for now, I'm in a great place. The torture chair is next. These are pretty darn straightforward. You set yourself in a position, then do as many reps as possible with control and a full range of motion. My personal preference is to also finish each set with as many partial reps as possible after I'm no longer able to do any more full range of motion reps. I find that this movement is all about enduring the fiery pain of ongoing tension on the quads as the set goes on. Simple, yes. Easy, no. Being in a deficit, I find it can be tempting to let performance slide a bit, not so much because the body doesn't have the energy to keep up, but because the mind might feel a bit groggier or even lazier, like it wants to give up sooner. That's sometimes the case with these for me, being in an ongoing deficit. So I often need to give myself a bit of an extra mental push to continue enduring as much of the fiery tension as I possibly can handle. Chest-supported dumbbell rows are next to hit my traps. When I was a younger lifter, I used to consider the more fast-paced workouts that left me more visibly exhausted as being of higher value. I thought that the more I would sweat, the more I was breathing heavily, the more muscle I'd be building. Now I know that that really isn't the case. And in reality, sometimes slower, more relaxed looking movements lead to more muscle growth. Keep in mind, I'm saying relaxed looking. Even though the movements here leave me visually seeming like I'm not going hard, my traps are actually screaming. Personally, moving faster, throwing around heavier weights, or taking shorter rest times to get my heart rate up and leave me feeling more systematically tired actually often has led me to hitting my target muscles less effectively, not more. So for these, I move with tons of control and with pauses at the bottom of each rep, which might make me look like I'm being lazy. I also take my time with these. But in reality, I'm actually being more precise about hitting my target muscle, and I'm hitting it more effectively than if otherwise. It's comparable to trying to hit a bullseye from a target that's 100 meters away with a sniper rifle and not a shotgun. Lateral raises are up next. I actually mentioned in one of my last videos that the biggest struggle I face with these is a mental one. Specifically, it's that I often just don't enjoy doing them. Check that video out for a better, more complete explanation on that if you'd like. I've been finding something similar with these as I mentioned with the leg extensions from earlier. Getting deeper into the deficit, it's becoming more tempting for me to start dropping reps, not exactly because of any diminishing energy or strength levels, but more so because I mentally don't want to continue enduring the fiery tension on my delts by the time I get deeper into the set. Psychologically, it just feels easier to stop the set before truly getting to failure, and even to start letting technique get sloppy in the process. So, as I get deeper into the deficit, it's going to be a continued mental battle, more than a physical one, I think, to keep performance high on these. In regard to technique, I keep it very strict to be precise about really nuking my delts. Tons of control, slower tempo, pauses, and I'm using zero momentum. Incline dumbbell bicep curls are up next. This is the bicep curl variation that consistently leaves my angry left elbow unaggravated. So I've opted to include it as my only bicep isolation exercise for the past several weeks. That being so, my angry left elbow is feeling significantly less angry at this point. So I might include an additional bicep isolation exercise within my rotation very soon. I'm thinking something like machine preacher curls again, but we'll see. I suspect that being in a deficit has made the elbow pain take a bit longer to subside compared to, say, if I was in a surplus. Like I mentioned in the very beginning of this video, the body seems to be less forgiving from a recovery standpoint when in a deficit, simply because less energy is entering into the body to promote healing or the recovery process. So when nagging pains or injuries are present, I found that being extremely attentive about not causing further aggravation is absolutely critical to allowing those pains to heal. This elbow is taking a while to get to 100% again, but we're getting there. I'll just need to continue being very attentive to not re-aggravating it as time goes on. As far as my technique goes with these bicep curls, I'm moving slow with tons of control for lighter loads and with lots of reps. That ensures my biceps are screaming throughout each set without any re-aggravation going on for the poor old left cranky elbow. And the French press is up next to finish up the workout. Being in a deficit has had virtually zero impact on these, which seems to often be the case with many smaller isolation movements, aside from the mental impact of leg extensions and lateral raises, that is. It's largely the bigger, more technical compound lifts that seem to take a hit first, and in my case, usually the horizontal pressing, and at around the same time, the big lower body movements might start to see a difference too. Anyhow, I do these typically at higher rep ranges, usually above 15 reps, at least for the first set, and at a relatively slow tempo, with adding pauses at the bottom of each rep. You'll notice that I don't 100% lock out at the top of each rep. The reason for that being is when I do, I would momentarily lose tension on my triceps from locking out, and that's not my preference. I like to keep tension there for the entirety of each rep and across the entire set. And that's the workout. Hopefully, in sharing my approach to working out in a deficit, it might help you out a little bit too, particularly if you find yourself in a similar context. If you have any questions about my training approach, my prep, or anything that I've shared in this video, please drop your question in the comments below and I'll be happy to answer. Before this video comes to a close, I wanted to quickly let you know about the work that I do. When I'm not making YouTube videos, recording podcast episodes, or making Instagram content, I work full-time as an online physique coach where I help my clients to accomplish their muscle growth and fat loss goals by optimizing their approach to strength training and nutrition. And I coach them through the process. I've been doing this work for over 7 years and love helping my clients to not only transform their bodies, but ultimately their lives. If you've been considering getting some help with accomplishing your own physique goals, feel free to hit the link in the description below where you can learn more about the work that I do and how I can help you. You can even use that link to schedule a free video consultation with me. If you have any questions about my coaching or how I can help you, just email me at sam@jadeathletics.ca. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.